we are again, night 2, so Saturday night, talk number 3. Do I have anything I want to tell you about this talk? I don't think so. Here we go. I should have drank that before I started this video. I'm so sorry, boss. Okay. Hello, friends. Happy Saturday night. How is the weekend going? I hope you're having fun. I hope you loved your seminars. You guys, how cool are the people that are up here this weekend? Isn't it awesome that they really care about this transformation process you're going through? They're such neat people. I wish you could have heard every single one of the seminars, because every single one of them was like, amazing. And we've had some crazy fun too. Capture the Flag, that's my favorite. It reminds me of being a kid again. I just love it. I think this has been a great day. I've just had fun. Thank you to those of you who've been hanging out with me. It's really been cool getting to know you. I love that we still have one more night together, and we've got so much planned for you. It's gonna be awesome. Do you love Oak Bridge? I love Oak Bridge. I love coming up here. I already told you this morning that I love just looking around at the views here. But there is a sweetness here at Oak Bridge that just isn't present for me at home. I love being here. I feel, I just love it. In fact, it's one of my favorite places. Do you have a favorite place? I've got a few. I've been fortunate for some reason to have traveled a decent amount in my life. And I've been some really cool places. I absolutely love Barcelona in Spain. I think it's one of my favorite cities right now. There is a church in Barcelona called La Sagrada Familia. I know I did a terrible job of pronouncing that. Spanish itself is hard for me to speak, and then Spanish in Spain is a whole nother world, and then Barcelona's Catalan. Anyway, I'm not good at pronouncing it. But the Sagrada Familia, you step into that church and you're like, oh my gosh, this is actually where God lives. Something about the way the architecture marries nature and concrete and windows and light. I never want to leave. I sit in that church and I think, oh my gosh, I would be so holy if I lived here. I love it. And I love the architecture of Barcelona and the people. Oh, the Catalan people are like I love them. They're like the most raw, real people you'll come across. I love the city of London. I love that London has all this old world culture, that I can be walking down the street, and I remember doing this actually, walking down a street, an alleyway, looking up at the building and seeing a sign that said, this is where Rudyard Kipling grew up. And that may mean nothing to you. That's totally okay. I'm a major nerd. In fact, if you didn't know, my kids are all named after books and my favorite characters in books. And one was actually almost named Kipling because I love Rudyard Kipling. He wrote the Jungle Book, Mowgli and Baloo and all of that. And so I love that there's this deep literary history. They've got a theater district that rivals Broadway. And then they still have these pockets of the city that house 90s style punk rock guys and a totally modern hip culture as well. And the people in London, I've never met a Londoner I didn't like. So I love it there. I love the city of Portland. I grew up outside of Portland, so Portland feels like home, and Portland is crazy, you guys. And it just gets crazier, but it's home, so it's my crazy, I love it. I love the art in Portland. I love that Portland people are just they're just them. They do naked bike rides and it's cool. I don't, just to clarify, do naked bike rides. But I kind of like the whole Keep Portland Weird stuff. Love the food in Portland. It's just a great city. Oh, by the way, at the speakers thing, sorry, this is for you, Christy. At the speakers workshop, they suggested I show cities of all these pictures of all these cities. So I'm gonna try to find some good pictures to have in a slideshow of them, just one of each city. But anyway, back to the talk. And I love all of those places, but my favorite place is a Young Life camp. And no, it's not Oak Ridge as much as I love it here. And no, it's not Lost Canyon as much as I love it there. It's actually Young Life's camp in Canada, the famous Malibu. Malibu was the first Young Life camp I ever went to. It's the camp that my mom went to when she was in high school. And I love Malibu because it is the place where I got to do work with Jesus and where I became transformed by him in a new and more precious way than I had before. I had the pleasure of doing summer staff at Malibu the summer after I turned 20. Summer staff and work crew, I just have to take a break and say, if you want to grow in Jesus and if you want to build some really cool friendships, you should do work crew. And then when you get a little older, if you want to grow and build some really cool relationships and get to know Jesus on a whole nother level, you should do summer staff. Just do it. It's awesome. And you can go to cool places and it's great. And talk to your leader about doing both of those things. Okay, now that's, I'm back in, okay? I just have to say that, you guys. I think it's really important. So, anyway, I was at Malibu, first session, which is June, and I was there for 3 weeks. And in Canada, in June, it's still raining every day. And I was the pool lifeguard, and it's an outdoor pool. And so surprisingly, I was there by myself every day. And so my favorite place in the world is not just Malibu, but it's a really specific spot. I'll have a picture of this as well. It's a really specific spot. It's on these rocks. I don't even know if they're there anymore. Malibu's gone through this whole renovation, but it's these rocks at the end of the point where the pool is at. And if you sit on these rocks, they overlook the Princess Louisa Inlet. I wish I could describe to you the beauty of this place, but I would try and you would just be lost. I'll say this, you're surrounded on 3 sides by water, and I'm not talking like ocean beach like we have here. I'm talking like giant fir trees and like crazy rapids that are dangerous to boat through, and giant mountains that make you feel like you're this big. And I would sit on these rocks and I would overlook the inlet. And if you just sat on the rocks at the end of the pool deck and looked out at the inlet, if you never turned around and looked at the rest of the camp, you would think you were just in the middle of this wilderness all by yourself. And so on days where it was raining or cloudy and no one was at the pool, which was like every day, I would borrow 6 or 7 jackets from different people, and I would sit all bundled up on these rocks, and I would just do work with God. I would pray. I'd read my Bible. I read like 3 or 4 books. Screw Tape Letters, I know, was one of them. Making All Things New was another. Those are great books, you guys. Write them down. They're awesome. Do you have your journals out? Remember, you take notes during club. Write things down. So write those 2 books down. They're awesome. I spent a lot of time thinking about life, and there was stuff in my life that wasn't great at that point. I would talk with my mentor, who was my summer staff coordinator, and she still is actually one of my mentors to this day. And she would come and sit on the rocks and talk with me, and I would cry, and I made decisions on those rocks that furthered my transformation process in a huge way. The most tangible thing is I decided to end a relationship I was in that was just stupid and unhealthy and bad on my part and on his part. And I remember leaving Malibu and coming home and knowing that I had come one way and I was going home another. And that was precious to me. And that is why that's my favorite place in all the world. Because to me, when I think about being with Jesus, I think of those rocks overlooking the inlet. And I think of how in 3 weeks, I went one way and walked home transformed. And here's the deal. When we are in the presence of Jesus, we can't help but be transformed, right? And the Bible, like I was telling you this morning, the Bible is full of stories of people who are transformed by Jesus. And the thing that is even cooler maybe than that is the amount of impact a transformed life can have on an entire community. This story I have for you today is a story of impact beyond what you could imagine. Okay, so let's look at it. This is a guy. Well, let's just look at it. This is a guy who Jesus did crazy things with, okay? It says this: Jesus and his friends went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. Just pay attention to these things. Okay, remember what I've said. Mess up your Bible, you guys. So if there's weird stuff as we're reading, and trust me, there's weird stuff as we're reading, write it, like note it. Draw. If you're having trouble like underlining and stuff, just put a little pencil dot next to it. But interact with this, okay? Because this is a crazy story, okay? Anyway, so this guy lives in the tombs, literally lives with dead people, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. This man lived in the tombs and no one could bind him anymore. So notice he's been bound before. Not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. This guy breaks my heart. This guy is miserable. I want to say this really fast. We all have our demons, right? We've all got stuff that we're dealing with. We've all got things that hold us down and keep us from living the life we were meant to live. And this, guys, are so bad that he is literally choosing to live with dead people instead of living amongst his town. Does it ever feel like you live with dead people? The Bible says, "He who has the Son has life, and he who does not have the Son of Man does not have life." Do you feel like the people around you have life? Now, one of the reasons I love doing Young Life and being here at places like camp is in Young Life, people know what it means to have life. There are people full of life in Young Life, and the reality is a lot of times it feels like my world does not know what it's like to live life. A lot of times I feel like this guy. Anyway, that's beside the point. This guy does not hang with people who have life. This guy literally lives with people who are dead, physically dead. He hangs out in the tombs. This is his home. And then look, beyond that, I mean, doesn't your heart just break for this guy? I mean, look at him. He lives in the tombs. No one could tie him up anymore. In fact, he would break chains when you put them on him. But people used to chain him up. I mean, look at the words you would use to describe this guy. Here are some of the ones I have. He's isolated. He lives alone. He's lonely. This guy's been bullied. I mean, talk about people tying him up with chains. People trying to subdue him, hold him down. This guy's been abused. He's misunderstood. He's depressed. It says night and day he would cry. And he cuts himself. This guy breaks my heart. He's in a bad way. And this is what Jesus shows up to, right? And it says, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. I love this part. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want me with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What's your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. This guy is doing some work with Jesus, right? Dude, this guy is full on chewing him out. Have you ever wanted to do that? Have you ever wanted to let God know how you really feel? I mean, this guy is not holding back. "Don't torture me. Don't send me away. What do you want with me, God, Son of God?" Did you know that it is okay to tell Jesus how you feel? Did you know that Jesus can handle you yelling at him? Remember I told you this morning there's whole passages in here where people just let God have it. There's actually a term for it. It's a spiritual term called lamenting, where and lamenting, really, I call it just doing work with Jesus. It's just letting Jesus know that there are things in life that aren't right, and you don't get it, and you don't get where he is in it, and you're mad, hurt, frustrated, whatever. And this guy is lamenting at God. He is letting Jesus have it. And he is telling him off. And he tells Jesus off. And then Jesus continues. I mean, instead of Jesus being like, "All right, fine. See you later, dude." Jesus steps in. And this is what happens. Okay, remember how this morning I was telling you that there's some stuff in the Bible that's weird and like is hard to deal with? I'm just going to prepare you that this next part is one of those things that for me is a little weird, a little hard to deal with, but it's good, okay? So just hang with me. It's going to get a little weird, okay? Like horror movie status weird, okay? Now you're excited. I hate horror movies, but whatever. Okay, it says this. So he tells him, "My name is Legion. There's a bunch of us in this guy, a bunch of us demons," and says this: "A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons start begging Jesus, and they say, 'Hey, send us over to those pigs. Let us go into them instead.' He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. And those people..." Oh, just kidding. "And they run into the lake and they're drowned." Don't start reading verse 14, Carrie. You're not there yet. I just want to take a minute and stop and say this. I don't know every story in this room, but I know that your lives are not easy. And I do not deign to think that I could understand all of what life has held for all of you. And I know that there are people in this room whose lives have been hard enough to drown 2,000 pigs too. And I just want to say to you that I am so sorry that that's been your story. And I'm so sorry that that's been what you've had to go through. And I don't understand why those things happen. And I am heartbroken for you. And I want to say this to you, that Jesus is bigger even than those stories. And Jesus is bigger than any of those things. And Jesus is gracious and full of love. And whatever it is, Jesus is here for that. And I just want you to know that we love you. And I'm so sorry. And that Jesus was bigger than this guy's story. And he's bigger than yours, demons too. On we go. So then it says this. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. This is crazy, you guys. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who'd been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Jesus transforms people. In one encounter, this man goes from crazy, tortured soul, living with dead people, to sitting at Jesus' feet, wearing clothes, and in his right mind. Do you remember when Jesus did that for you? Do you remember when you could not get enough of Jesus? Do you remember when every little thing you learned about him was exciting and new and inspiring? Do you remember when you went from death to life with Jesus? How did people respond? Because the way this town responds is crazy, okay? It says this, then the people, it already said they were afraid, but then it says, then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. They're afraid. They want Jesus out. Maybe some of you experienced that when you told people you were going to follow Jesus, because a changed life is scary for people to watch. And these people cannot handle the idea of that kind of power that would take a tortured, abused, broken, cutting, depressed guy and turn him into full of peace, sitting at the feet of Jesus. They cannot comprehend that, and because they can't comprehend it, what's easier is to say, hey, you scary guy, can you please leave? Because we don't want you interjecting into our lives. And so that's what they ask. And so Jesus is a gentleman, and he's not going to stay. Oh, I was going to ask this. Did that happen to you? How did people respond when you chose to change, to let Jesus begin transforming you? How did people respond? How did you respond to their response? Anyway, so Jesus leaves because Jesus is a gentleman, and it's one of the things I love best about him. He will not stay where he's not wanted. If we ask Jesus to leave, he will go. He will always come back, but he will go. And so these people ask him to leave. And so it says, as he's getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. And I feel like that's an understatement. In my mind, this guy is like wrapped around Jesus' leg like my kids do when I try to leave him with a babysitter. And Jesus is like dragging him through the rocks and sand to the boat, you know, like dads do. And he's like dragging him, and the guy's like, no, let me come with you. You know, and he's like screaming, I don't want to stay. Like, and he doesn't want to stay because these people don't get it. They don't get what's happened in his life. Anyway, but Jesus wouldn't let him go, it says. He turned to him and said, go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Here's the deal. Jesus wants you sitting at his feet. He wants you up on those rocks at Malibu like I was, and he wants to speak and pour into your life. And he wants to teach you, and he wants to love you. But he also wants to send you. See, Jesus wants you to take your transformed life and share it with others. And did you see how the people responded? He goes out into the Decapolis, which, by the way, means 10 cities. So he goes out into these 10 cities, and all he's doing is telling the story of his own life. And it says the people were amazed. They kicked Jesus out, but they could not deny the power of this guy's amazing, true story. Your friends and family and community may want nothing to do with Jesus, but they cannot deny the truth of the amazing things he has done in your life. That's a fact. You are transformed, and that is a truth that cannot be denied. And so while people may not want anything to do with Jesus, your story in itself can show Jesus to your whole community. You do not need to know everything about Jesus in order to make an impact. All you need is to use the incredibly powerful tool that he's given you, your life. Telling your life, or even just living your life for him and not talking about it, can have amazing impact on your world. 3 chapters later in this book, Jesus comes back to this town, and it says that people saw him on the lake from afar, and before his boat could even land, people start running and bringing to him every sick person, every injured person, every person with mental disabilities, every person who needs love and comfort and anything like that. And they start running to him so that when he gets off the boat, he has the whole community there. And that's all from one guy's story. And we're not talking about one great, awesome, holy person. We're talking about a crazy guy who used to live in the graveyard. And he simply tells his story, and his whole community wants to know more. If he can do that in just 3 chapters, imagine what you can do in a year in one town or in one school. Or imagine what 6 of you could do in the next 3 months in your one school. I mean, it's crazy to think of what God could use you to do just by using your story. Okay, here's the deal. I think tonight in our talk, one of 2 things has probably come up, and maybe there's other stuff in the middle, I don't know, but I think either you're in a place where you're feeling convicted, and by convicted I mean when we're talking about the stuff that we're dealing with, you're recognizing there's stuff you still need to deal with, and that is great. That's essential. That's part of the transformation we're trying to do this weekend. Or maybe you're sitting there and you're inspired and you're like, I do have a story and I do have a community that needs it and I do need to share it. And I think you're in one of those places or somewhere on the spectrum in between. And so what we want to do is something, we want to honor that. We want to honor that you might be a little stirred up tonight. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. We're not done. There's so much going on tonight. But we're going to go outside and we're going to just have a little time to be with Jesus and do work with Jesus and sit at his feet. Imagine you're sitting on the rocks at Malibu, looking over that inlet, and you're just going to work through stuff with Jesus for a little while. And maybe you've got stuff to confess, and that's okay. And maybe you've got stuff that you're excited about, and you want to start talking with Jesus about how to impact your community, and that's okay too. But we're going to take some time, do that necessary work with Jesus, and then we're going to come back in. And we're going to sing a couple worship songs, and then we're going to do something pretty cool. When you come in, you're going to find that all your leaders are going to be lined up around the room. And they are going to be there in case you've got stuff you either want to pray about, stuff you want to talk about, things you need to confess, or ideas that you have. They're just going to be there for you. And we're going to sing a couple songs, we're going to pray together, and then I've got one more thing to share with you before we move on. Sound good? Okay, so then they're going to go out. They're going to have 10 minutes. We're going to come back in and do worship and prayer like we do at Leader Retreat. And then I'm going to say this. 3 chapters. It took only 3 chapters for the guy with enough crap in his life to drown a herd of pigs to go from that to impacting 10 cities at such a level that when Jesus showed up in town, they were scrambling to get to him. 3 chapters. If you're thinking, that was then, Jesus was there, this is a new world, life is different, I get it. Because that sounds hard to me too. So I wanted to tell you just really fast the story of my friend Kate. I met Kate when she was a sophomore in high school at Palm Desert High. I was her English teacher. I also was a young life leader at the time, and we became friends. And I loved Kate. She had just this sweet heart. We really connected and became good friends. Kate was always looking for acceptance. She really wanted to know she was okay and that people liked her. And so because of that, she did a lot of stuff that she shouldn't have done. She was just looking for her place, right? And so I remember taking Kate to camp her sophomore year of high school. I remember sitting with her on the steps outside of the Gold Cup. You know, if you go to the Gold Cup, those of you who've been to Woodlife, you go to the Gold Cup and you walk past it, and then there's those steps that you can walk down to go to the gauze pad. We were sitting at the top of those, and I remember her expressing that she wanted Jesus, but she knew it would be hard. And I remember saying to her, Kate, this is hard. This is a life change. But I'm willing to do it with you. And I will walk through this with you, and I get that it's scary, but it is so right. And I remember praying with her and her choosing to follow Jesus with her life. And Kate came home in this little tiny, she's an itty bitty person. I used to call her a pocket person because I'd say I could put her in my pocket and take her everywhere with me. She went from this little person that was always hoping to be okay with people to this like little ball of power and strength. And I remember, because I was friends with all of her other friends and all the friends that she did all sorts of stuff with. And I remember them being in my classroom one day going, what is with Kate? And saying, if you'd have seen her last year, she was taking shots with the rest of us. She was hooking up with guys with the rest of us. And now she's just okay with herself and comfortable with herself. And they were baffled. And Kate really grasped onto that belief that he who has the Son has life, and he who does not have the Son of God does not have life. And she wanted that life for her friends so bad. And so that summer at camp, Kate helped fill a cabin with 19 girls from her school. 19 in one cabin. And she, that summer, fundraised enough money to pay for herself to get to camp and 2 other friends. 3 people. That was over, $2,000 worth of money she fundraised in order to pay for kids to go to camp. And there are kids today, they're not kids, they're full-grown adults, because Kate's now back in the desert. She's a teacher at a local school. She's praying about volunteering with Young Life. And there are girls in the desert and in other communities who are following Jesus now because they saw Kate's life change. And they came to camp that summer because they saw something new in her. And she impacted our community powerfully and continues to do so. So don't discount yourselves. My teeny tiny pocket friend who was so full of insecurity and needed some strength and power got that from Jesus. And her transformation was so huge that her school all knew of Kate as this new person. And it was crazy what God used her to do. Okay, I'm going to pray and we'll go to cabin time. But we're not over. There's other things coming tonight. Okay, this is saying 36 minutes. I know some of that is pausing and talking to you about my talk, but I do feel like this one's long. I think I can probably trim it down if you see things that you think I should cut out. There is that break in the middle where they're going to go out and have time, but it is a longer club. I don't know what you think of that. You tell me. You're the boss. I live to serve. You, boss.